This week I did a series of short devotions to try and give a bit of a feel for the events that took place day by day in the week that led up to the execution of Jesus Christ, beginning at Palm Sunday all the way to the Passover, which turned into the Lord's Supper or First Communion on Thursday, and finally I did the infamous account of Christ's death on Friday, often referred to as Good Friday. I put the twist of Black Friday, and I personally believe that event took place on a Friday. I personally see no sense in arguing with people as to whether it was Wednesday or whether it was Thursday or whether it was Friday. But the passage I'm going to read and a point that I'm going to make, in my opinion, gives strong evidence that it was on a Friday. And I'm reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verses 42 to 46. Says, when evening had already come, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea came, a prominent member of the council, who himself was waiting for the kingdom of God. And he gathered up courage and went in before Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate wondered if he was dead by this time, and summoning the centurion, he questioned him as to whether or not he was already dead. And ascertaining this from the centurion, he granted the body to Joseph. And Joseph bought a linen cloth, took him down, wrapped him in the linen cloth, and laid him in the tomb which he had hewn out in the rock. And he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Verse 42 does allow us to see that it was the day before the Sabbath, and the Sabbath was on Saturday, the seventh day of the week for the Jewish people. And what I want to draw is something that I at least find to be an interesting parallel. Jesus' death was on Friday, the sixth day of the week. The price for sinful man was paid on day 6. Jesus completed the work of salvation in paying the sin debt in full on day 6. And the parallel is the comparison to God's creation account all the way back in Genesis. As we refer back to Genesis 1 and 2, we see God go to work on his creation. And it's on day 6 that God places the crowning jewel of his creation as he creates man and woman in his image. And this was, I see it as the final brushstroke of God's glorious creation. After God performed all of his creative acts, we see as he created the birds and the bees, the flowers and the trees, he says, good, good, the stars, the moon, the sun, good, good. After all the things that he created, every time God said it was good, but it wasn't until the creation of man that God said, very good, very good. The crowning achievement of God's creative work. Unfortunately, his crowned creation fell by succumbing to sin in the garden. Man and woman sinned, corrupting the image of God that they were created in, therefore introducing death in the world. Death by sin was introduced into the world. Yet by Jesus' finished work on the cross on day 6, God provided redemption for the human race. And just as God said, very good on day 6 of the creation account when he created man, Jesus said, it is finished, as he finished his redemptive work for his fallen creation, and therefore finished the work of recreation in the human race. And it is very good. It is very good. And I can't help but think about, in the eyes of the apostles and the followers of Jesus Christ, I can't help but think about Saturday, the next day after Jesus was put to death. The Sabbath day, a day that was really marked by a whole lot of nothing, no work, just a break from everything. And I can't help but think about that Saturday for Jesus' followers. Well, Jesus returned back to his Father after he died, and on Saturday, I believe he enjoyed the Sabbath with his Father as he took delight in the finished work for the fallen race. He enjoyed a Sabbath rest from a very hard day's labor of dying on the cross, just as God rested and enjoyed his Sabbath work all the way back in the original creation, which leads us to Saturday. And like I said, I try to imagine what Saturday must have been like for Jesus' disciples. You know, these people that had just invested 3.5 years of their life in this man that had just died and got put in a tomb. They had seen their master, their miracle worker, get put to death, and they had a whole day of Sabbath to kind of take in and absorb all that had just taken place. I believe that it must have been a day of shock, maybe not even quite believing what all just went on. It was probably a day of uncertainty, a day of reflection of everything that had happened. No doubt a day of great concern, probably a day of even anxiety, a day of depression about what's next? What's next? What's going to happen from here? Where do we go from here? We don't have him in bodily presence anymore. Imagine what Saturday must have been like for his followers. Well, while they were pondering all of these things, the Father and Son, they were in heaven, and they were ready to make the next step in their master plan. You see, something really big was planned for the next day that was going to put all of their hearts and all of their minds at ease. A next day that was going to give them a newfound hope, confidence, and assurance. Many of us right now may be in a Saturday in our lives. There's a lot of uncertainty going on, a lot of concern, a lot of what's going to happen next in our world or maybe in your individual life. And I assure you that God already has it figured out. Just as Saturday in the life of the disciples, the Father and Son, they already had Sunday figured out. They already had the next day figured out. So I assure you, God already has it figured out. God knows what's next. So the best that we can do is place our trust in the one who already knows for whatever tomorrow may hold. So I hope to see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. as we talk about God's living hope for our lives.